Thank you very much, Femi. Your Royal Highness, Mr. Prime Minister, if he's back in the audience, ladies and gentlemen, the mission of AID, which is to help feed the world with a healthy diet, food from a healthy planet. That's what my institution, AFAD, has been doing for the last 40 years. So the mission resonates very well with us. Our focus is on small producers or smallholder family farms, 500 million of them in the developing world, especially. And they produce about 80% of all the food that is consumed in the developing world. Now, when you come to think about it, the irony or the paradox is that hunger and poverty runs deepest amongst these poor producers. If you're going to solve the problem of hunger and poverty, you go where it is. And that is why IFAD works essentially with this forgotten, invisible part of our human race. Mostly invisible, hardly ever does the media or the press reach them unless it's election time. So let me ask you two questions. Do you believe that there is a universal global challenge to our food system, or is it limited to developing countries alone? Second, is there a difference in the needs of rural communities in developing countries from those of rural areas in developed countries? Now, while you consider these questions, let's take a look at the AID mission. Why is it that in a world where there's plenty to feed every woman, every child, and every man on this planet, we still have problems of nutrition, of inadequate food, and insufficient food? You have the figures, you had the figures, almost 1 billion, roughly 800 million people go to bed hungry every day, every night. This doesn't have to be the case. While we have malnutrition, on the one hand, in the developing world, on the other hand, in the developed world, we have obesity. Why is that so? If we actually produce enough food to feed our growing populations, how come we have about 1 billion people still going to bed hungry? It is not acceptable. Where food is in short supply in parts of Asia, sub-Saharan Africa, we produce too little of it. Again, the irony is, the part of the world where we have the hungriest and the poorest is the part of the world where we have the most available agricultural land. Number two, the part of the world where we have hunger and poverty the most is the part of the world where productivity, unit cost, unit per area, unit per person, is perhaps 40%. Africa does not optimize its growth potential. We always talk about potential. In my 40 years, I have seen a lot of potential in new varieties, in new technologies, what have you. But potential does not feed hungry people. We need action. Why am I frustrated? Because we know what works. We know what to do, and we know what not to do. Yeah, we had some great conferences last year. Financing for Development in Addis, UNGA, General Assembly, Agenda 2030, COP21 in Paris. Great. Talk. Declarations, commitments. They have not fed the world in my lifetime They never will. What we want is action plan. Actionable plan that can be financed, that are bankable. Let's stop the talk. Let's walk the talk. I hope that's what it is about. That's what, Madam, you said earlier at the opening. So how are we going to do it? Our 500 million farms in the developing world can feed the world. Africa can feed itself. What does it need? First and foremost, right policies, land ownership by these same people who farm the land. But most important, from my point of view, I know that President Kufuor doesn't agree with me, political leadership at the highest level of government. Committed, dedicated, visionary leaders. Good governance. Rule of law. Let me ask you a question. Africa can produce enough food to feed itself, yet it is not doing so. Africa spends, Sub-Saharan Africa to be more correct, spends $35 billion annually to import food, excluding fish, which costs another $600 million annually. Do you know what that means? Stupidity. Absolute stupidity. We are spending $35 billion to create jobs for those of you who produce them in Europe, in the Americas, and in Asia. Putting money in their pockets, while we have over 200 million jobless youth in Africa. Money that should be invested in African farmers to feed Africa and to feed the world. What's going to happen? What is already happening? When young people are hungry and angry, they migrate to the urban areas. There was a time when the rural-urban migration was considered ideal. No more. Because what you have is nothing but swelling slums. Cities are expanding, but that is because you have a 40% increase in slum growth. So these disgruntled young people become nothing but victims to extremism and rhetoric. And you end up with a crisis. Or else they take the bold but stupid decision to cross the deserts and the seas, and they end up here. A good number of the thousands of migrants that are coming to Europe are not fleeing from conflict-affected areas of Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. They come from West Africa, hundreds of them, because they are fleeing from inequality, lack of jobs, indignity. So, lack of food causes political unrest. It results in rural-urban migration and then out-migration to your part of the world. How do we stop it? Simple. The right policies. I'll quickly give you, I know I'm right out of time, I quickly give you what I consider we can easily do. One, policies. The right policies, consistent policies, reliable policies that do not change with government. Good example, land rights. At least community land rights, if not individual land rights. Two, access to markets, infrastructure. Who will live in an African village where there is no light, no electricity, no energy, no roads, no schools, no clinics? Investment in rural infrastructure is very key. Number three, collective organizations, capacity building. They have to have a voice. Small farmers are not waiting for handouts. They are waiting for economic opportunities. All we have to do is give them and support them. They need linkage to markets, number four. And finally, number five, they need functional institutions good governance, committed and visionary leadership, and the rule of law. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem is simple. All we need to do is take action. Thank you.